Welcome to another Photography Simplified video. My name is Chris, and in these videos, I do my best to simplify digital photography for you with the goal of helping you to get out and take great photos. In today's video, we're talking about the different camera types and comparing DSLR and mirrorless cameras. Let's get into it. So in today's video, we're going to be comparing DSLR and mirrorless cameras. Now, it's important to call out that I'm making this video in 2025. Technology is continually changing and things seem to be pushing more towards mirrorless, and they're getting better and better technology as the years go on. So that perspective is important to keep in mind. I myself have watched a lot of videos on the topic, many of which were produced 3+ years ago. By the way, if the video is helpful to you, please leave a like and subscribe so you can see my other tutorials as well. First, let's start with DSLR cameras. DSLR stands for double single lens reflex. Let's discuss how a DSLR camera works. In a DSLR camera, light will enter the camera's lens, then is reflected off a mirror and through a prism to the viewfinder. Meaning in a DSLR, when you're looking through the viewfinder, you're seeing an actual image as if you're looking through a window. This means if you're shooting when it's dark outside, what you see in the viewfinder will be dark. If it's light outside, what you see in the viewfinder will be light. It's the actual image of light reflected through the camera. With a DSLR, while you're shooting an image, the mirror will flip up, allowing the light to then hit the sensor so you can record the image. As the name indicates, a mirrorless camera does not have the mirror. Light will go through the lens directly to the sensor. This means that the viewfinder is electronic. It's like a miniature computer screen in the camera showing what your lens is seeing. The nice thing about an electronic viewfinder is because it is a screen, you can see things like settings and adjustments as you change your camera settings to the image. By the way, if this video ends up helping you, there may be more helpful content in my book, Photography Simplified. If you would like a visual beginner's guide to photography, check out my book, Photography Simplified, available in both paperback and ebook format on Amazon. The book covers topics including exposure and the exposure triangle, sharpness and focus, gear, composition, editing, and more. It even includes a list of beginner tips. There are helpful graphics to explain each of the topics that are covered in the book. I've put a lot of work into this book to include everything I wish I could have known when I started out. If you think the book could be helpful to you and haven't already, check the link in the description for more information. Next, let's go over some of the pros and cons of DSLR cameras. Because DSLR cameras have been around longer, there's a great used market. You can get cheap used gear as far as camera bodies as well as lenses when it comes to DSLRs, and this can be a great option to help you save some money. DSLR cameras can also be very durable and tough. There's not as many electronics and high-tech technology in a lot of DSLR cameras, and they're very weather resistant and durable. Also, battery life can often be better on DSLR cameras. Again, I'm making this video in 2025, and many things have changed, and mirrorless cameras are catching up a lot to DSLR cameras. However, some of the cons of using a DSLR is that they're often going to be heavier and bulkier than a mirrorless camera, simply because they have to have that prism and the mirror mechanism that take up more space, making them bigger. Another con is that they are older and have less technology. You lose out on some of the benefits and advancements that have been made over the years. And an important thing to call out is that a DSLR camera will likely have a slower autofocus than newer, more high-tech mirrorless cameras. Next, let's go over some of the pros and cons of mirrorless cameras. One of the biggest pros of mirrorless cameras is you get to take advantage of all the newest tech. As new things are invented and new technologies come out, they're integrated into the mirrorless cameras, and these added features can often make taking photos easier, more user-friendly, and so on. Another thing is that mirrorless cameras often perform better at high ISOs. And as we discussed with DSLR cameras being bulkier and bigger, the opposite is true with mirrorless cameras. They're often lighter and more compact. This can be nice, especially if you're hauling around gear, hiking, and that type of thing with your camera. Another pro to mirrorless cameras is that because they use an electronic viewfinder, you can see your adjusted image in the viewfinder. This means as you're trying to tweak your settings to get your exposure and other things right, you can see the changes reflected in real time in the viewfinder, allowing you to know how those adjustments are affecting your image. Also, if you're into video, a mirrorless camera can be a great option as they're often better for video. And as we mentioned before, a mirrorless camera will have a faster autofocus, and you can even have a silent shutter, which can be great for things like wildlife photography. Now, as far as the cons for mirrorless cameras go, again, I'm making this in 2025, and I don't think there's very many when we compare them to DSLR. Things have come a long way. However, some of the cons may be that they may be more expensive if you're buying the newest models, but even used models, there are more mirrorless cameras out there now and available. And some mirrorless cameras may not have as great a battery life as some of the older DSLRs did because there's much more technology sapping some of that battery power. Now, my recommendation if you're a beginner is to go for mirrorless. The newer technologies and other things like that are going to give you so many more tools to capture great images, and that seems to be where things are moving and what the future will hold. So you might as well get on board and get used to it. However, that being said, if you are just starting out and budget may be an issue, go for a used, cheaper DSLR. You'll be able to find plenty of lenses and camera bodies at a discounted rate that are used and still very capable of taking great images. Hopefully this helped you understand DSLR versus mirrorless better and helps you know what to get if you're looking for a new camera. See you in the next one.